Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Long Beach Public Library's Long Beach Memories program. We have a very, very special program today. It's in celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday, which is celebrated every January. This is a cooperative program with the library and the North Park Civic Association. And as we can see, Dr. King was a very, very, very handsome, very photogenic gentleman. Of course, his lifespan, which is such a horrible thing, is that we lost him so early that he only lived until 1968. He, in my mind, and I don't have, of course, any memories of my own of him, but only what I've learned in school and, of course, of my own research. But has been, for me, has been a guiding light in my life and in many lives of other people. I'm going to go to our next screen. Today, we have special guest speakers, Deanna Cruse, whom I had to record at her home. She was a wonderful lady who cooperated by doing a recording in her house. She is now 83 years old. I had spoken to retired Long Beach police officer, Simon Portee. He's class of 1963. I spoke this morning to Mr. John Simpkins, and he said he'd be joining us today. I have online Dr. Patrick Graham, former director of the MLK Center from 97 to 2001. I have Jean Zeigler online, and we have been sharing the phone conversations back and forth for the last about a month now, and she's enlightening me about many, many things. And I have Miss Anissa Moore, former Long Beach City Councilwoman, and of course, professor in college. And I thank you all for coming today and joining me in my program. I know Dr. Graham, you're on. I know Anissa's on, and I know Jean Zeigler. Ms. Zeigler, I know you have an appointment this morning, so you would like to speak first. You can start off our program. Thank you.
Okay, good evening, everyone. First, I would like to thank Eileen for my participation in this special program. I realize how much effort and time is required to schedule such a program. I want to also thank all the speakers today, especially the Dr. Graham, former Long Beach police officer Simon Portee, former NAACP President John Simpson, and last but not least, Professor Anissa Moore.
Hello. I'm good. I keep talking.
According to my research, and this is what our assignment basically were, it's to search and seek and report Dr. King's visits to Long Beach, not just Long Island, because in my research, I realized that he attended and he visited many, many areas and organizations in Long Island. But today we're looking at specifically when he came to Long Beach. And according to my research, he visited Long Beach 3 times. The first was in 1958. He visited Christian Light Baptist Church on J.J. Evans Boulevard, previously known as Park Place. Dr. King took part in the commemoration opening of the new church. He required that photos of the attendees be taken in the area of the resident, because the buildings and the offices did not have doors. There were people there that was not particularly in agreement of that, and they wanted to have the pictures taken in the front of the church. It doesn't specifically say who won, but it appears from additional information that I read that the pictures was taken in the residential area. So that was his involvement with Christian Light Baptist Church. The research doesn't provide much more than that. So the second time he visited Long Beach, that was in 1965. He was touring Long Island. He was on a tour in Long Island, and he stopped by and addressed the residents of Long Beach. He addressed the subject of Negro, and a question when he was making that speech. He had a question presented to him, and the question was, why not wait to make changes? And of course, he responded, and his response was, we have waited for more than 340 years for our constitutional and God-given rights. In parentheses, of course, King wrote further, then followed by an emotional charge of litany of black grievances as his answer to the question. The last stop that Dr. King made in Long Beach, and some of us may be familiar with this area, was in 1968. And he stopped at a rundown area at Riverside Drive and Harrison Avenue. I think at that time, it could have been Riverside Drive and was changed to Riverside Street later. And also, I thought it was Harrison Street opposed to Harrison Avenue. But by all means, it's the same location. And he spoke to both black and white residents. And his speech was to them, is to inform them that they all are tied together in a single garment of destiny. He also advised them and encouraged them to let them know that they cannot continue to perish on a lonely island of poverty in a sea of prosperity. They gave him many applause for that. In the writing, it indicates that they certainly understood exactly what that message was. So with me not having any more time than this, I'm sorry. There were other comments that I would like to make, but I just wanted to inform the group and record the dates and the communication that Dr. King had with the residents. And I do believe, I don't have my notes in front of me, his last visit, 2 weeks later, is when he was assassinated. And whoever would like to research that to make sure that my data is correct, please feel free. Are there any questions?
Jean, thank you so much for everything. That was wonderful. And your dates are they're pretty correct. They are correct as far as I can see. So I will thank you so much for your speaking with us today. And this is part of the local history for the library. And so it will be available to anyone to watch once it's up and on the library's website. It'll be recorded. It's a YouTube recording and it'll be on the local history page.
Well, I'm positive about everything except the 2 weeks that he was after he visited Long Island, that he was assassinated. All the other facts are what they are. They're facts.
I think they're correct. Jean, thank you so much for joining us today. Who is going to speak next? Is Simon Portee available? Is he here? Mr. Portee? Jean, are you still there? Jean left. Okay, so I don't see Simon. Is Mr. Simpkins available? Okay. How about you, Dr. Graham? Would you like to speak?
Sure. I believe I see a Barbara Portee. I'm not sure if that's Simon. But one of the things I just want to just talk about is really what Dr. King means to me as an individual. One, I think that King often misunderstood, for me, is one of the greatest symbols of Black manhood and manhood in general. Because he was an individual that was willing to put his not only mind and spirit to the task, but put his body on the line.
Yeah.
And what people have to understand is that oftentimes he is putting himself in harm's way for the rights of others with no way of knowing if it would be his last day. So it speaks to what I would call a healthy manhood, a healthy bravado, as we talk so much today about what toxic masculinity is. I believe he exhibited what actually healthy masculinity is.
Okay.
One. Two, I think that something that we don't often talk about is that in King's last two visits here to Long Beach, they were actually during some of the most unpopular times of his life. We often think about King from the I Have a Dream. We think about the bus boycott, but we don't realize that the last 3 years of his life were actually the most trying and difficult. By this point, he had already made a stance on the war and lost some of his allies, even some of those members within the Urban League and others. Whitney and Young started to disconnect in some ways, not all, but in some ways from him because of his stance on the war, as well as Roy Wilkins. And it was Roy Wilkins actually who was one of those speakers early on in '65 that Martin followed here during the creation of Christian Light Baptist Church, the edifice that we know today. And so when I think about King in that time, it really took a lot of spiritual strength to first stand and be strong on issues that today we now cherish and celebrate him for, but at the time really divided us. The other is that for me, what was interesting about King, and Jean was referencing this, is that when he was visiting during the building of the church, at the time, there was this big celebration around the notion that we had this interracial committee that created the edifice that we know as Christian Light. Christian Light, the church actually already existed, was already a gateway for Black Southerners to come to when it was first located in a dilapidated garage. But I think what's interesting about that is that when King actually opts to take a photo instead in front of housing that he considered not to be up to par, we have to understand that during that time, particularly his last 3 years, that King is influenced by younger people who actually want to address issues of poverty. He was not as knowledgeable about poverty in the North and what the interactions between poverty and the intersections between poverty and race really were like. And so he took tours of the North, New York, Chicago, other areas. And so Long Beach being one of those places, it shouldn't be surprising to many that he wanted to take a photo in front of those homes, because he was really trying to make a point for what would later become the Poor People's Campaign.
Right.
And so this is all part of that. And so we have to put it in a context to understand
Right.
That when King does that, why is he doing that? It's because it's part of a larger vision and picture. Ultimately, though, that when we decide to name as a community the Martin Luther King Center after him, there were other names that were being considered. And talking with Jimmy Graydon, who I recently just did another interview with, in addition to other members in the community, some who are deceased now, there were other names being considered, even the likes of even a Malcolm X were being considered at the time. But Martin is finally selected, not just because he was just more palatable at the time. It'd be interesting to see what would happen if this was done in today's context. But it's done because at that point, King started to actually come much more to the center within the Black liberation movement. He was actually one who believed in economic justice and began to focus more on economic justice, which was not a popular message. It was okay to say, let's have civil rights and be kind. But it's different to say, no, let's also have equitable access to economic opportunity. That's a whole different thing. I mean, even in his death in Memphis, what is he arguing for other than fair wages and rights, economic rights? And that timing is very important because he also really led a philosophical discussion around land. Remember, up until 1968, the government literally legally redlined communities based on race. 98% of all loans went to the white population. 98% of all federally backed loans at that point. So when we talk about him recognizing what type of impacts that would have, it was so fitting that day that he actually said, I want to take a photo in front of this dilapidated home, because what he's really saying is, this is not what my liberation movement is about.
Right.
It is about something much greater. It is about not just social justice, but it's about economic justice.
Yes.
And so that's what he means to me.
I really appreciate that. That's an amazing insight. And he is quoted. There is quotes about the Long Beach Poor People's Campaign that starts, of course, after he dies. And it is, I think it is James Graydon that is interviewed in the article. And it is referencing Dr. King's mission about equality in also in resources and in finances and in job status and all of those things. They come to light more down in 68. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Right. March on Washington was the March on Washington for freedom and jobs.
Yeah.
People often forget that.
Yeah, that's thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Graham?
Okay. Hello.
Yes, who's speaking?
Yeah, this is Simon Portee.
Oh, hi, Simon. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Simon, how are you, dear?
I'm doing good.
I'm glad you came. So could you like to give us a little bit of insight to our day's program on Dr. King's visit to Long Beach, your remembrances of him, and how it affected you in your lifetime when you were here in Long Beach?
Well, first of all, I'd like to acknowledge everyone on the panel, and thank you again for having me.
Of course, it's our pleasure, and I thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Well, Martin Luther King Jr. I think was a forerunner in the NAACP. And to me, he was like Moses, like a leader of God's people, leading God's people. Although there were other leaders, I think he was the #1 leader. Dr. Luther King's vision of equality and civil disobedience changed the world for his children and the children of all oppressed people. He changed the life of African Americans in his time and subsequent decades. He believed in nonviolence. He lived and died for his beliefs. And although throughout this process, Martin Luther King was leading us into what we know, into the Constitution, basically the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment of the Constitution, establishing political equality for Americans of any race. And this was together in the 13th, 14th Constitution Amendments. Dr. King, he went everywhere that there was injustice. And basically, he was a leader of the people. And everywhere there was, from the deep South, Mississippi, Alabama, those places, up into New York. And myself being a Southern man, young boy at that time, I was involved, not directly, but saw the racial things that went on in the South leading north. Like there in the South, there was so much segregation. There was water fountains that were totally white, black, toilets the same way, white, black, movie theaters, integration of schools, segregation of schools, everything was there. And the Martin Luther King went wherever he was needed. When people called him for advice at that time, if he could make it, he would go there. And the same thing applied in Long Beach in 1965, that was also stated when he came to Long Beach. Willie Sherrod at that time was the local president of the NAACP in Long Beach. And I guess he requested, I asked Dr. King, since he was making a tour of the northern states, would he come to Long Beach? And there was a photo of, in the local paper, of Dr. King along with Willie Sherrod. I have no idea what they were talking about. I think he had security around him. There was a lot of people there as well, that Dr. King came to Long Beach. And the reason he came to Long Beach was that the city of Long Beach had a lot of problems. And the problems today, they still have a lot of problems. There was a lot of racial issues when I lived in Long Beach. And I came to Long Beach in 1960. And then I retired in 1988. So there's a lot of things that were going on at that time. And my cousin, Alonzo Charles Murkison, and myself, we were the first African Americans in Long Beach to take the exam and become police officers in the city of Long Beach. We were the very first Americans, African Americans, to join the police department. I'm just putting this in there because I think it has something to do, it has a lot to do with Dr. King was establishing throughout his career as to bring people together, not just one race of people, but all people together and to form one unity of things. But I retired after 24 years of service, and Murkison, my cousin, I call him Merk, but his real name is Alonzo Charles Murkison. Now, I'm going to make this remarks here, and this is in 2011, the city of Long Beach celebrated the 100th anniversary of the Long Beach Police Department, okay, with a 2011 calendar. Now, this calendar was very nice. Pictures of officers who I worked with and whom Officer Murkison worked with. But I looked over that calendar thoroughly, or you can take it for what it's worth, but there was no pictures or remarks of me or Murkison. And like I said before, I served 24 years as patrolman. Murkison served 35 years. And during that time, before he retired, he had made sergeant, became sergeant, the first African-American to be a sergeant in the city of Long Beach Police Department. And it would have been an honor for us to have been a part of that calendar. But I was some reason, whatever it was, we wasn't shown in this calendar. But Long Beach is a very lovely, beautiful city. I love Long Beach. And they said, once you leave and you get the sand in your shoes, you always come back to Long Beach again. And I come up every year. If I miss a year, I'll come up the next year. But a lot of problems were back then at that time. I demonstrated before we joined the police department. Officer Murkison, my cousin, we demonstrated. We picketed, we did sit-ins in the city of Long Beach. And this all has to do with the movement, which started in the South, but basically the movement was also in New York. I think by 1909, the NAACP had a national office in New York, and this expanded, I guess, worldwide in different states where there was segregation, and Martin Luther King would go to these different places. But I don't live in Long Beach anymore, so I don't know what the situations were at this time, but the people that live there know the situations that existed then and things that exist at this time. So basically, those are my comments at this time.
Thank you. Officer Simon, no matter what, we appreciated your service, and I appreciate your service. And I actually remember you when I was a little kid. So you impressed me in your nice blue uniform, Officer Portee. I remember you so well, and I was a little girl, but I remember you. And so you have my thanks and our family's thanks, and the city should be thankful to have such a good person on the force, and your cousin, Mr. Murkison. It's a shame that, you know, in hindsight, sometimes people don't realize that they overlook something that was so extraordinary and somebody who was important, just as important as everybody else. So I thank you for your comments, and I appreciate your speaking on our program today. Anissa, are you there?
Can I ask a question, Eileen?
Yes. Yes.
Simon, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Joe Ponte. We had the restaurant on Park Place next to Bob Schuler's bar.
Right. I remember the restaurant. I definitely remember the bar.
And that was a special post that was initiated in the 60s.
That's correct.
That you worked it, Murkison, and we had a patrolman White also was a police officer for a short time. And I remember you, even though I was young, and it was 50 years ago, I just wanted to interject that from the time I met you, you were just an amazing person with friendship and full of love. And I wish you the best. We lost sight of each other because in Park Place when they, condemned all the buildings, but I'm happy to see you 50 years later. And it's great that you're on the call. Thank you.
Thank you. Anissa, you there?
Yes. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. First, I'd like to thank the library for partnering with the North Park Civic Association. I do want to recognize the president of the North Park Civic Association. I don't know if you are still available, Mr. Miles, to just say hello before I share my reflection.
Greetings from the North Park Civic Association. Yes, I'm here, Ronnie Miles. I appreciate everything I'm hearing and seeing that we were actually able to reach back and get this brought to the forefront, because this is a part of the forgotten or left out series of the history of Long Beach. But we've been here for many, many generations and will continue to be here. I appreciate you all for all that you've done and that you continue to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miles.
Thank you. And it's an honor and a privilege for me to be a part of this program today. First, I just want to pause to honor all of the actual speakers and people who are also on the line. I'm only here because of your work. I currently teach at Nassau Community College. One of the courses that I teach at Nassau Community College is entitled Communication in Black America. And a part of that course is really looking at the Great Migration. And bringing it all the way to the present. And a part of that course obviously includes the civil rights movement. And we understand and recognize that all grassroots movements, at least in the present, in the 20th century, have really used or utilized the strategies of the civil rights movement. And so again, I'm really happy to be here because I'm hearing the actual stories. It's one thing for me to talk about the history in class with my students, but to hear the actual stories really brings all of my work alive. And so thank you, Dr. Graham, for your work. I look forward to reading your book, but also thank you to John Simpkins, to Mr. Portee, Ms. Cruse, Ms. Zeigler, and also I also want to recognize Mr. Quetta Odom, who's also on the line today, for her work with the Concerned Citizens Organization. because again, there's no Anissa Moore in the city of Long Beach in terms of making history, like many of you, to be a first without all of your hard work. I'm going to just basically read a poem that's a part of my book, 11226, Just a Girl from Brooklyn. I'm just reading a poem today in terms of my tribute to Dr. Martin Luther King. And I hope that this poem will also inspire you, but also help you to hold not only his words, but his mission dear to our hearts so that we can continue to facilitate change, not only in Long Beach, but obviously in the entire United States. MLK, he was more than a man who had a dream. With every speech, his words spoke truth to power. From a dark prison cell where most folk would find despair, he picked up his pen and let poetry flow, a letter from Birmingham jail. They couldn't imprison his warrior spirit, nor silence his strength. King taught us the power to love in the face of hate. King taught us to hold our heads up, to walk with dignity and grace. Yes, we will never forget the dream. We will always remember the struggle. Black bodies sprayed with water, young people, sons and daughters, flesh torn by dogs, some burned. Some were hung on trees, others placed in a jail cell for simply sitting at a luncheonette or simply asking for respect, all because of the color of their skin. But that spring morning when death came, shots were fired. He found the mountaintop and looked over. He soared even higher. So what does it mean? King's dream means that Jim Crow didn't win, that Fannie Lou Hamer's fight was not in vain, that Cesar Chavez and the migrant workers would experience brighter days. It means that freedom fighters of all creeds and colors calling each other sisters and brothers to obtain the vote, their deaths will always be remembered. What does the dream mean? That Shirley Chisholm could run for president, that Bella Abzug could fight for women's rights, that Ellen Ochoa could travel into space, that Barack Obama could be elected twice as the chief of state, that Sonia Sotomayor could serve as Supreme Court justice. Yes, it means all these things, but it really means that ordinary people can reach beyond what they can see. It means without pain, there can be no glory, that light always conquers the darkness, that truth shines brighter than lies. It means that America can still rise, for the Confederate flag no longer flies over South Carolina. That's why the collective voice of the people will never stop. And that's why I will always give Baynard Rustard and Ella Baker their props. For many work behind the scenes to achieve a dream, for the people united will never be defeated. Humankind will always see improvement. That's why Black Lives Matter is still a movement. What does it mean? Ordinary people still do extraordinary things. This is why we celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King. King was more than a man with a dream. So let us continue the legacy for all humanity. Walk in his vision. Tear down the walls of race, class, gender, and religion. Begin the conversation again to leave his legacy of love and strength for all of our children. For our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter. Today, we must commit to pursue brotherhood and peace. Too many people have died in our streets. Now we must never forget how his leadership and his vision changed our world. Yes, Dr. King was more than a man with a dream. His voice cries out today, do something for others. For every step towards the goal of justice requires sacrifice, suffering, and struggle. I thank you because once again, may the words of Martin Luther King bring us all together, regardless of our race, our religion, the color of our skin. May we continue to fight for justice here, especially in the city of Long Beach, but also abroad. I thank you.
Thank you, Anissa. That's beautiful. That is so beautiful. May I have a copy of that? It's very powerful, very, very powerful and absolutely true. I can't say, it just goes right to your heart because yes, there should be no difference. We're all human and we are supposed to celebrate all of our contributions and all of our struggles to be able to have a free world. And I'm very happy that you're on our program today. That was beautiful. I'm going to start our slideshow. Has anybody have any questions?
Hello, can anyone hear me?
Yes,
Can the media ask a question?
of course. Who's speaking?
It's Jim Bernstein, editor of the Long Beach Herald.
Yes, how can I help you, sir?
Well, thank you very much for this fabulous presentation. A lot of it was completely eye-opening to me, and I thought I knew something about Dr. King's visits here, but I see I didn't know an awful lot. And so thank you for that. I wonder if Officer Portee would mind spelling the name of his cousin, which I don't think I got.
If you want, I could send that to you.
Could you
If
please?
Of course. I could send, I have your email.
You do? Oh, okay. I would really appreciate that.
Of course, Mr. Bernstein.
Yeah, and the date, and I think it was 1968 that Dr. King visited Long Beach for the last time, obviously. And
Yes.
stood in front of the dilapidated homes.
You're gonna see it's part of the, it's gonna be part of the presentation.
Okay, will it name the church that he visited as well?
At that point, I'm gotta just clarify if it was actually in front of the church that's existing, or is it might have been in front of the house church, which is with on Riverside.
What is the name of that church? That's what I need.
I don't remember the name, but I can get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
You're very welcome.
And Eileen, I see that our brother John Simpkins is here.
Oh, Mr. Simpkins, hi, how are you?
I'm all right. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
I apologize because I just found out how technically unsavvy I am with the Zoom thing. But I
No,
do
no
apologize.
worries, no worries. We're still here. We may run a few minutes late, but I'm sure that everybody's gonna hang in there. So, Mr.
Thank you.
Simpkins, I would like you to share your remembrances of Dr. Martin Luther King's visit to Long Beach. And I thank you for being on our program today.
Thank you. Well, I remember it was a game changer for me because I was never really a proponent of nonviolence. But by walking with Dr. Martin Luther King, and we walked through the community and we walked by the Christian Light Church, which was located on Riverside Boulevard in Harrison Street. And just to hear him speak, I was amazed because there were some things going on in Long Beach that were totally mysterious. I mean, there were buildings on Broadway and Show Road where people of color were residing, and it seemed like overnight these buildings were catching on fires or they were being evicted. And Mr. Rufus Lofton and Mr. Willie Sherrod and Cliff, these were guys who were pioneers in our community, and they were noticing it, and they were picketing and demonstrating in front of these houses. And they had the connection to the people who were attached to Reverend Martin Luther King, and they contacted him, and he came. And his speech was powerful, and like I said, it was a game changer for me because about 1.5 or 2 weeks later, he was assassinated, and we said, "Wow!" I mean, we were in shock. But we walked through from Park Avenue down Park Place, down Hudson Street, all the way down to the church, and then we walked down Harrison Street, and there was quite a few people. And like I say, his speech was profound. I'll always remember it, and since that time, I've already celebrated his birthday in January. So it changed a lot of things in my life. But it was a memorable speech. As a matter of fact, when he left Long Beach, he went to Rockville Center. And I tagged him on because that's how mesmerized I was.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. As I said, I'm quite young, so I was not even a year old. I wish sometimes I was living in those times because I'm a history buff. My son too, he's inheriting that from me. I love history, and we should know our history, and sharing our history of Long Beach. For me, this is a very important part because you can't exclude what happened. People should know about everything that's gone on in Long Beach, not just about 1907, but all the pieces that are missing in between. And I feel that this is that little bit of missing information. So I'm very glad to have you on today to speak about it. and the other people who are speaking today, because it's an important part of history for us. It's a progressive part of our history, and it should not be lost. So our program is to preserve our history and to keep it safe. Does anybody have any more questions? I particularly love this piece from Newsday. It was written in October 14th of 64. Dr. King was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, and he was committed to nonviolence. And Mr. Simpkins just spoke about this, so this is perfect timing that he came into this slide. His resistance to segregation was by being passive, kind of like what Gandhi was doing years before, but his persistence of nonviolence and to be able to sit in and to do things peacefully to bring people knowledge, it's an amazing feat, because it's not easy to convince all peoples that this is the way to go.
Yeah, the only thing I would just say is that these old interpretations of him being passive, this notion of passive resistance, there was nothing passive at all about his approach. As a matter of fact, it was a very direct way of dealing with it. So I think that sometimes it soothes us to think of him as this mild-mannered, passive guy, as opposed to the revolutionary that he really was.
Right.
And I'll just say in closing, what's important about that Nobel Prize is that Martin Luther King was so intelligent that he actually reached out and brought the international community into this movement.
Yes.
And so part of the reason why he was celebrated with that Nobel Prize is because that was the international community's message to America that they were now watching.
Of course, of course. And it was very important. And I understand what you're saying about that, not to be passive, like we're not going to do anything, but he was strong in that. Even though he sat, he was strong. So I don't take it that way, where most people may understand it in the way, but you're absolutely correct. But here's the first article I came about when I first started doing this research. And this is documenting that he was becoming to Long Island. And this was written in May of 1965. And of course, his visit included in this area, Inwood, Vauxhall Center, Lakewood, Hempstead, and Long Beach. Now, I do know that he was also in Suffolk County. I do know he made his way all the way up through upstate. So it was not just in this part of Long Island. He was all over the place. This gentleman went all over New York State. But I was more trying to be more geared to Long Beach. So I'm doing my research more to our community. So, but we are on this tour in 65. I do know he was in New York State in 57 and in 58 as well. People have said that he was here in 57 and 58. I wasn't able to find any articles of that as such, but memories are part of the oral history. So he did go to this Island Gardens in West Hempstead, and his main was about voting rights. People don't realize that even though they passed the law about no poll taxes in the state of New York, people were still being taxed to vote in a state election. So he was very on top of speaking to the senators, and he was out there trying to get people their rights. Here's the 9th of 65. They're talking about his rallies. He went to the Senate. He displayed his courage to remove poll taxes from state elections. This shouldn't have even been happening. The law was already passed. But you see, it was going on anyway. So it just goes to show you what we know and don't know. Right. May 11th, 65, it's talking about the rally again, and this is now Newsday. He's going to be at the Island Gardens on Hempstead Turnpike. It's incredible that Newsday really picked up on all of his stops. They talk about him being on, this was actually, Gene had mentioned this, Riverside Drive and Harrison Avenues. I'm not sure if those were correctly stated in the newspaper, but we know them today as Riverside Boulevard, and Harrison Street. But this is him speaking to the people in Rockville Center, in Long Beach, in Hempstead, in Lakeview. He made his rounds on this part of Long Island, and he wanted to tell people that we have to stop what's going on. And basically, he was going right to the senators, and he was speaking to the government, right to them. He wanted to show his leadership in leading people on their rights to vote. He had a civil rights rally also. So he's speaking out for the people. They sold more than, it says 9,000 tickets for these rallies. So that's an interesting feat. This is from Getty Images. This is a Newsday shot. This is him speaking in Lakeview, May 12, 1965. These shots are also from Newsday. And I will tell you that I wish I had the photographs. These are out of the newspaper, of course, and the quality is not great, but there you see the crowds who turned out to come hear Dr. King speak, and they are taken in front of the houses. People are standing and holding on to poles on the top of everything, trying to see him as the people are parading through the streets. This is amazing. I just wish I could have the real photographs because this quality is not very clear, but you could see that people are everywhere trying to get a glimpse and to hear him speak. And he's talking about civil rights. This is May 13th of 65, and this is from Newsday as well. You could see it says, height of interest. Youngsters at the left stand on top of automobiles to hear Dr. King speak to a crowd in Long Beach. There's a series of rallies on Long Island. Long Island tours bring throngs to the streets. And the best line is his last line in this quote. And this article is written by Thomas Johnson of 1965 Newsday. We want all rights any other citizen has. That says it all. We should not discriminate about anybody. This is a discrimination not just about Black people, but about anyone. He wanted rights for everyone. Everybody should have equal rights. When he made his tour visit in that time, he comes back and is asked to come and speak at Hofstra at the commencement. So in this particular article, it's in a very tiny spot in the New York Times, in the Long Island section, special to the New York Times, that he was going to come and speak to the class of 65 at Hofstra University. And here you see is Reverend Edward Odom Jr. He's a secretary of the NAACP addressing Human Rights Rally in Rockville Center. And Dr. King is there and all the candidates at that time who were running for office. And this is May 24th, 65. June 2nd of 65, he speaks at the commencement. It says Long Island colleges are to hand out 4,100 diplomas. Now, this is not just Hofstra. This is Adelphi University, Suffolk Community, CW Post, Hofstra, Malloy, Nassau Community. This goes beyond Hofstra University. This was a very, very, very huge commencement, and he got to speak. He was also given from Lord, from Hofstra. He was given also a diploma from Hofstra University, but he speaks at this commencement. In this particular article, it does talk also about Vietnam and the conflict and the destruction and the nonviolence. So it's not just, he is for justice all around. The last line says, the heritage of our nation and our God demands this. He's very, 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 and this is where wants to solve the world's problems and to be without the violence. And Dr. Clifford Lord is presenting him an honorary degree. He's 35 years old. He's courageous leadership in the struggle to uphold the principles of a true democracy for all men. And this is right from the Hofstra archive. Here, Dr. King is in Great Neck. This is in 67. So he's back on Long Island again, 2 years later. He is speaking again in Fire Island. He is on Long Island again to tell people that America needs this hope. He's trying to bring hope because there's so many people who are in despair. This is March of 1968. He is at Southside Junior High School, and this is now he's speaking about the poor. He's telling people that we have to take care of our people. We're speaking in behalf of the poor. This is Dr. King speaking in Rockville Center. And this is right off of the Diocese of Rockville Center's webpage from the church diocese. And he is speaking in Rockville Center, 1968 in March.
Shiloh Baptist Church.
Thank you. In April, of course, 1968, the Nassau Star covers his memorial services. And it's very sad because he was just here. And I think it's either 9 or 10 days after he was here in Long Beach that he was assassinated. And they do hold a special service memorial for him. And as I said, I love newspapers because at least we have some kind of documentation, but the photographs are not very good. But I tried to lift out some of the important parts of this. Is a front page from April 11th, 1968. And this is the members of the Christian Light Missionary Baptist Church singing a hymn for him. There are 500 people in memorial services, and the Long Beach clergy, civil rights leaders eulogize Dr. King and their speeches. The city council, of course, is there. NAACP is there. The clergy council, I think Long Beach itself, the Temple, Emmanuel, there were many organizations, church affiliations, houses of worship who were all present for this. Because this was a very, very, very emotional time and loss of a very great person, great man. Now we're up to 2016, Long Beach Herald, which I copped. It says Long Beach Public Library in the top. It's celebrating his legacy. And Anissa Moore, you're right there at the bottom speaking. His legacy and until today, and we will be marching again for his birthday this year in the city of Long Beach. Hopefully with COVID, we'll be able to do this, to be able to celebrate a great man. This is from 2016 Long Beach Herald. This book came out this past year, and I love the title, MLK and LI, Long Island, Martin Luther King Jr. and Long Island. And it says in her quote on her back page, words were spoken by Martin Luther King at Hofstra in June 13 of 65. We have inherited a big house, a great world house, in which we live together, Black and white, Easterners, Westerners, Gentiles, Jews, Protestants, and Catholics. So basically, it's everyone. It's justice for all and liberty for all, and people to be able to work cooperatively. And my program today is to show you our cooperation and our protection and our keeping our history alive. Dr. Martin Luther King plaque dedication in November of 2020 on the boardwalk at Riverside Boulevard. And this is from School Board of Education, Bay to Beach Civic Association, Citizens of North Park, Long Beach City Council, Martin Luther King Center, Long Beach Historical Society, students and volunteers were all at this celebration and dedication. Now I'm going to have my recording of Deanna Cruse, Memories of Dr. King's Visit to Long Beach. I recorded this on December 16, 2021. Ms. Cruse is 83 years old, and I'm so glad that she was able to do this with us. Good morning, Ms. Cruse. This is Eileen at the library, and we are recording for our program on Martin Luther King's visit to Long Beach. We will be having our program on January 4th at 2 p.m. on Zoom, and I'm so happy to have you as my guest speaker today. I'm so excited to speak to you. I know that you were here in that time when Martin Luther King in 1965 came to Long Beach on his tour. And all this is I just want you to speak of your memories and what you experienced at that time. And it's from your heart to the world, that they should know that MLK was here in Long Beach. Thank you, Ms. Cruse.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know, you're saying 65, but you know what stays in my mind? 57.
Okay,
That's what stays in my mind. Now, he was here more than once. Once he was at our church, I know. I heard he was there twice, but I only saw him myself one time, and that was on Harrison Street, between Riverside and Park Place. And I'm pretty sure it was 1957. He was on the back of a pickup truck, and, you know, of course, a crowd, you know, had gathered around. I did get to shake his hand, very soft hands. And he spoke at the time. It was a lot of stuff going around, especially with housing at that time. And supposedly this is why he came here to speak to us, to get, you know, give us some type of get up and go and to keep striving to make things better. He had such a dynamic voice, dynamic speaking voice at that time. And I don't think any of those people are still living that were here back along and then. None of the old timers, because now I'm the old timer. You know, I'm 83 years old, and I'm the old timer. At that time, the NAACP was just getting started out here. And the guys that were instrumental in bringing him here, none of them are living now. And they all had been prior college students at somewhere in North Carolina, where there was a problem with them sitting at the counter to eat breakfast, lunch, you know, whatever. And it was good to see him. It was great. You know, it gave you a lot of get up and go to have somebody of that caliber come and speak to us, you know, to bring him here for us. It was a great feeling.
I'm glad you could share that with us. In all of my research, he was here several times in New York, of course, and on multiple occasions he fought for housing and for you know, desegregation of schools, and he spoke to the Senate about polls for voting, because people still, even though we lived in New York, were not able to vote in elections. So these were some of his very major points of being in New York. And he toured not only Long Beach, but Rockville Center, Lakeview, Hempstead. My research has brought me back and forth to him being all over Long Island, all the way out to Suffolk County.
He was.
Yeah, so I'm so glad that there's still somebody here to be a witness to his presence in Long Beach. And I wish I was around back then, because I'm a history crazy person. I love history. So this program was an inspiration to me. For many years, I've had it in my pocket, and had to find the right time to be able to share it with the public. It's good to keep the history alive, and since you are here, it's going to stay alive. It's going to be part of the archive. And I'm so grateful for you to be here with me today, Ms. Cruse. It's very, 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 very thankful for letting me have you tape this and put it on my program on that 4th. It's going to be on my program at the library, and I will treasure my work. I treasure my work. I treasure being with the people. I can't thank you enough for being here today. Do you have any other closing thoughts on Martin Luther King's visit to Long Beach?
Well, he definitely was one of my heroes, definitely. And I'm awfully glad that I did get a chance to see him in person, and that I did hear some of his finest speeches, some of his finest thoughts, you know, and it is so important that you instill this in our children, because it is just important. And if you don't do it, nobody's going to do it.
Yes, I agree with you. And I thank you so much for that. Thank you from the library. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, and many blessings to you and your family.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So that's Miss Cruse, and it was wonderful having had the time to speak to her. And I'm so happy that everybody else has come on today to speak about their memories of Dr. King. Does anybody have any questions?
Would you like to? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Anybody else have any questions?
It's Joe. I just like this. It was a great event. Great. Everybody was great. All the people. I know some of them on there. And I'd like just to say, since I was on Park Place, the restaurant, I worked for the city of Long Beach in the 70s, and I was assigned to Park Place. From Park Place all the way down to the water. And I was assigned to Shore Road since they brought Shore Road up. And another time, somewhere we'll speak at an event with Anissa, because that's a history. It's very interesting. That's only because I was the inspector for the building department, and there's so much rich history that no one knows. And one of these days I like to express it, all the great things that happened in my era working in the North Park area. And I want to thank Eileen, and everybody else. It was just amazing today, bringing back so many great moments of my younger youth.
Thank you, Joe. So this last part closing, we're a little bit over, of course, 3 o'clock. I can't tell you that, and I can't even tell you that how, when I listened to his speech to Hofstra alumnus and to the graduating class of 65, that how ahead of his time he was to be able to say the things that he did. I'm going to play you the speech. If you don't have time to listen to it, you can actually Google it.
5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Who's speaking? Dr. King was speaking to the class in Hofstra. If you don't have time to listen to this here, you don't have to stay. But I will tell you that it's an inspiration to listen to him speak. This is a recording on YouTube. You could actually search for it. You just put in Dr. King and Hofstra speech, and you will find it if you want to listen to it on your own. But I will tell you that he was ahead of his time. I can't thank you enough, everyone, for coming on my program today, for the library. Thank you to the North Park Civic Association. And thank you for Simon. Thank you, Deanna Cruse. Actually, I spoke to Linda King as well. I spoke to Jackie Odom. They all helped me with this research. Thank you, Anissa, Dr. Graham. If I'm leaving anybody out, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for being on our program today. I can't express my thanks enough. Just gonna play this and then we will close.
President Lord, members of the faculty and members of the graduating class of this great institution of learning, ladies and gentlemen. I need not pause to say how very delighted I am to be here today and to be with you on this auspicious occasion. And I certainly want to express my warm personal appreciation to your distinguished president
for extending the invitation. And I might say in advance that I'm deeply grateful to the president, to the members of the faculty, and to the members of the Board of Trustees of Hofstra University for choosing me to receive an honorary degree this year. I can assure you that this is an honor that I will cherish for many, many years to come. And this kind of moral support, this expression of support, is of inestimable value for the continuance of my humble efforts to make brotherhood and justice a reality in our nation. We stand in a real sense in danger of another world war. It reveals to us that the clouds of that war are hovering mighty low. So it is necessary to work hard to get rid of war, to bring about disarmament. But if we assume that mankind has a right to survive, we must find some alternative to war and violence. But in a day when vehicles are dashing throughout the space, guided ballistic missiles are carving highways of death through the stratosphere, no nation can win a world war. It is no longer the choice between violence and non-violence. It is either non-violence or non-existence. The alternative to disarmament, the alternative to a greater suspension of nuclear tests, the alternative to strengthening the United Nations and thereby disarming the whole world may well be the civilization plunged into the abyss of annihilation. And our earthly habitat would be transformed into an inferno that even the mind of Dante could not envision. So we must work in every nation, in every land, to get rid of war. Some years ago, the famous novelist died. Among his papers was found the list of suggested story plots for future stories, the most prominently underscored being this one. A widely separated family inherits a house in which they have to live together. This is a great new problem of mankind. We have inherited a big house, a great world house, in which we have to live together, black and white, Easterners and Westerners, Gentiles and Jews, Protestants and Catholics, family unduly separated in ideals, culture, and interests, who, because we can never again live without each other, must learn somehow in this one big world to live with each other. This is our great opportunity. This is the challenge ahead. May I say in conclusion that I still have faith to believe that we will go all out to solve these ancient evils of mankind. I still have faith in the future. I still have faith in America. Even on the question of racial injustice, I somehow have the faith to believe that we will one day solve this problem and that we are developing a coalition of conscience that will bring about an ultimate solution. I know that there are difficult days ahead. I know that there are the dark and desolate nights before us. I know that there is still a great deal of suffering ahead before this problem is solved. And so the challenge ahead is to work for this bright day. The challenge before each of us assembled here today is to become an involved participant in getting rid of war and getting rid of poverty and getting rid of racial injustice, Let us not be detached spectators or silent onlookers, but involved participants. And we will contribute to the development of that bright tomorrow when all of God's children will be able to live together as brothers, and every man will respect the dignity and worth of human personality. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair the stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. Certainly, we can gain consolation from the fact that we've made strides. As a nation, we still have a long, long way to go. As a world, we still have a long, long way to go in order to make peace a reality. But each of us can gain some consolation from the fact that at least we have made some strides in the effort to solve all of the problems that I've mentioned. So I close by quoting the words of an old Negro slave preacher who didn't quite have his grammar right, but who uttered words of great symbolic profundity. They were uttered in the form of a prayer. Lord, we ain't what we ought to be. We ain't what we want to be. We ain't what we gonna be. But thank God, we ain't what we was. Thank you.
So in closing, as I said, he was ahead of his time. I thank you for staying on with me for the full program. I want you all to have a happy and healthy new year. And Jean, I'm not sure if you're back, but thank you for all your cooperation and all your help and your stories. Officer Portee, a lot of people on the chat were saying how they appreciated you being on the police force. So I was reading the chat while I was on.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Yes, I got a question.
Yes,
Sorry.
sir.
Is this going to be shown again? Will people be able to see this?
It's being recorded as we speak, and it will be eventually, probably in about a week or so, it'll be on the library's YouTube.
In about a week. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Miss Odom, thank you. I can't thank you enough as well for helping me track down some people that were very important to this program today. I'm glad you're on.
You're welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. You guys, I can't tell you, without you, we would not have been able to do this today. I'm hoping you're back, Jean. Anyway, it'll be on the library's YouTube. And thank you so much for coming, everyone. Have a happy and healthy new year. Many blessings to you. Stay safe, and we'll see you next month. I am going to be the first Tuesday in February. I think it's February 1st. Let me double check my date. February 1st, I'm going to be doing the Houses of Worship. 2 o'clock, be there or be square. Have a great day, everybody. And thank you from the Long Beach Public Library and the North Park Civic. Thank you for all my people who spoke today. I appreciate everything you've done. Have a great day, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Be well.